Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. It's funny, I think of my fault line days, and how you start it. You got to start it with a huge amount of energy. And oftentimes it's like, okay, I need my coffee, give me my coffee. All right, now I have this kind of energy to bang around with. But no, guys, I am glad that you could join me for today. It is what, Tuesday? It is the 18th of February. And big events are taking place around the world. I want to give a shout out to my chat, U.S. Navy vet. Shout out to you, Diane Thomas. Good morning to you. And I think you two are the only ones that are effectively there this morning. So shout out to both of you. I know there's more, but still, those are the ones that have shown up. Um, Big events taking place. I feel myself in a weird space. Um, there are people who are full throated in ideology, and they would clump together and they would fight, they would bitch, they would moan, they believe that ideology. But the test of it is okay, when reality changes a bit, do you accept that reality is true or false? Meaning, when your ideology is put up against, okay, this is what's true, and are you going to back the thing that's true, even if it doesn't necessarily fit within the confines of the ideology and the war that you waged with that ideology against whoever you waged that war with? There is no space for nuance. Nuance doesn't work. Full throated works. Nuance, less so. So I find myself in a weird spot. I find myself on the left. If you talk to me about policy, it would be definitively on the left. Healthcare, education. But in that also, in healthcare education, what's built into healthcare and education is attending to the well-being of the individual, the human, a humanitarian point of view. What does that look like when you put that up against wars? And what I mean by that is people are against war in theory. It's a horrible thing in theory, but also in fact. It's that part that it's bad in fact to the human being that I'm pointing to in this. What happens when a man you define to be an ogre, that the people on your flanks that you identify with as being close to you in political point of view also define the man to be an ogre, and then the man ends a war that has killed hundreds of thousands of human beings, nearly 1 million people dead? What do you do with that? And do you say, well, that guy's an ogre, so anything that he does is fruit of the poisonous tree, in which case you can't touch it, because if you touch it, you give weight and credibility to somebody who's an ogre? Or do you say, thank God he ended a war that killed hundreds of millions of people, and he is putting a close to something that should have never happened, and it was ghastly in its conception and its outcome in actuality? Are you an honest actor? Do you call out something that is honest, that may cut against your own, let's say, framing? Well, let's say your own ideas of people who are good and people who are bad. I'm amazed by that take. And the reason I say that is it splits the opposition on some level. It comes up and says, all right, new norm. Previous idiot got us close to ending the world. We're not going to do that. We're rich. We enjoy our life. We're rich. Joe Biden went off the reservation. So we need to make things right. And we need to reorganize how this operates so we can continue to be rich, continue to breathe the sweet air, and continue to keep it moving. Now, I don't know if that's Trump's framing, right? He is rich. And you can imagine he wants to live as long as he possibly can being rich because, I would imagine it's a decent life. But there's something to be said about this idea of we're ending the war. Period. Say what you want. We're ending the war. We're bringing it to a close. Shouldn't have started. And so I'm ending it. And I look at that and I applaud. I feel it's the most natural thing and most honest thing in the world to say, hey, that's good. I applaud that. That's good. My head is in a tailspin, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. Um, and I would imagine that when Mark was talking about Russia, they are too. Also, I want you to notice something in the conversation with Mark yesterday. He is being skeptical, as he should be. He's being an analyst, as he should be. But there's hope. There's hope. That conversation, look, I have spoken to Mark when something bad has happened and his spirits are more morbid. There was joy in that conversation, not something that he said. It is a feeling that you get when you talk to him, and his emotions bleed through because he's a person, and those emotions are hopeful. This is wild. This is different. This is new. Moscow heads is in a spin, like most of us, as Donald Trump goes onto the world stage and reorganizes European and transatlantic relationship by himself. And points out, A, you guys are acting like children. B, you're living in fantasy land. C, you are breaking the very values that you set up for yourself. This is an astonishing thing for an American president to effectively belittle, talk down to allies over this issue after spending the last several years fucking up the relationship in every degree that you could possibly fuck up. That's astonishing. That's new. I've never seen that. So my typical cynical framing of this stuff I don't know where to go with it. I could say that he's making it up, but he doesn't seem to be making it up. He's taking every step that you would think to set up a context and a framework by which to end the war. For one, unprovoked war of aggression has gone. Nobody says that anymore. Two, long before Putin, expansion of NATO to the border was the right line. Thank you. Thank you. Acknowledgement of reality. Three, Russia is not going to accept a situation where the war flares up in 6 months. We need to end it. And we need to end it fully. Okay, again, this was all of these are lines that Russia has used, which means that there's a language and a space for these people to talk, for them to negotiate, because they accept basic premises of reality, as opposed to unprovoked war of aggression. Russia was going to take 150,000 troops and go barreling all through Europe and take everything associated with Europe. This was nonsense. But this was the nonsense that they continuously used to sell the war. And so when you hear an American president accepts the basic tenet of how it started, that's big. That's space. When you hear Kellogg effectively babysitting, saying his job is to babysit Europe because they're going to flip out, that's progress. When you see Rubio and Lavrov in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, right now, talking, and this is after last week a conversation took place with Putin and Trump that both sides are crowing about as good. This is progress. This is good. Meaning it's not conceptual what they're trying to do. It's taking place in actual fact. They are moving to end the war. They're moving to end the conflict. And it was put on the table by a U.S. was former Pentagon officer David Pine says there's a threat to Europe if they don't get on board, and if they take action to try to undercut the peace negotiations, that Trump will pull troops out of Europe, or for that matter, pull the U.S. out of NATO, or at the very least kill any, let's say, guarantee that the U.S. will get involved. This is his stick. I would imagine there's going to be a carrot somewhere. But I don't get the sense that Donald Trump considers Europe to be a power in the world. And because he doesn't consider them to be a power in the world, they don't matter. Now, they may not like that. It may hurt their feelings. But it is what it is, what it is. I am fascinated. That's all. I am. My mind is blown. And my mind is blown because a U.S. president is using U.S. muscle to shape events in the world that ends a conflict. Now, yes, there's Gaza, and Trump is trash on that issue. But you take your wins when you get your wins. And the Democratic Party went with this idea of forever wars. I find that to be atrocious. I find it to be atrocious that we're at odds with countries around the world that we don't need to be at odds with, purely out of ideological fashioning. And I will go further, not just ideological reasons, but they had this idea that Trump worked with the Russians to get elected. And they used that to whip up a frenzy in the party of Russophobia. It was weird, it was strange, it made no sense in reality based terms because they were never going to get what they wanted. And yet, that's what they went with. That's absurd. It's absurd. And so when you get a US president, even one that I would consider to be an ogre, hits a right note, I got to give him credit for it. There's no way around it. Now, they may not. They may hold on to this idea that, well, he's an ogre, you can't give him credit, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fair enough. As a lefty, it is built into the bricks that you are typically anti war. And if the president is going in that direction with not just Russia, but also hopefully with China, hopefully goes back to the North Korean negotiations, I find that it's to be a better world. I can only move in the direction of a better world. I'm not going to get everything I want. This I want. Even, by the way, if I don't get my job back. A million people got killed. And they can't define why. And you get part of the political spectrum that wants to maintain that and keep that going. I think those people are lunatics. I think they're sociopaths. I don't know how you look at that and be okay with that. And not just be okay with it, want it to continue. I don't want it to continue. Even if I get nothing out of it, I don't want it to continue. I care about the fact that all of those people are being killed. So I find this to be a positive thing, not a negative thing. I'm just fascinated by it. I'm just super fascinated by it.